An investigator from the state nursing board called my cell phone on a Tuesday afternoon, asking me to confirm my employment history at a hospital roughly 90 minutes from where I actually lived and worked, a facility I had never once set foot in. I told her she must have the wrong nurse. She read back my full license number, correct in every digit, attached to 8 months of documented medication administrations, patient charting, and shift logs at a hospital I'd never heard of, all performed by someone using my identity while my own actual license had been sitting and used in a completely different city. My name is Ashley, and this is the story of discovering that a former coworker, someone I'd once considered a genuine professional friend, had stolen my nursing license number after her own credentials were suspended following a serious medication error, and had spent 8 months practicing medicine under my identity, administering medications to real patients while carrying no actual legal authorization to do so. I want to explain my professional relationship with Danielle, the coworker ultimately responsible for this entire situation, because I think understanding the genuine trust that previously existed between us matters to understanding just how completely blindsided I was by this discovery. Danielle and I worked together for roughly 3 years at the same hospital, both of us nurses on the same medical surgical unit, developing what I genuinely considered a solid professional friendship throughout that period, covering shifts for each other during personal emergencies, generally maintaining the kind of collegial trust that develops between coworkers navigating the genuine stress and demands of hospital nursing together. I want to describe the specific circumstances surrounding Danielle's own professional crisis, which occurred roughly 10 months before this entire situation came to light, though I had no direct knowledge of the actual severity or aftermath of what had happened until considerably later. Danielle was involved in a serious medication error at our shared hospital, administering an incorrect dosage that, according to what I understood at the time through general hospital gossip rather than any direct, detailed knowledge, resulted in significant patient harm requiring extended additional treatment, though thankfully not resulting in the patient's death. I want to describe what I understood at the time about the aftermath of this incident, knowledge that proved considerably incomplete compared to what I would eventually learn. I understood that Danielle had faced some kind of internal hospital disciplinary process following this error, and that she had subsequently left our hospital's employment roughly 2 months after the incident. Information I received through general workplace conversation rather than any direct discussion with Danielle herself. Given that our own contact had become considerably less frequent during this specific period as she navigated what I assumed was simply a difficult professional transition following the error, I want to be direct about something I only fully understood much later. Danielle's departure from our hospital hadn't represented a voluntary transition to a new position, as I generally assumed at the time, but rather resulted from a formal state nursing board investigation into the medication error, an investigation that ultimately concluded with a formal suspension of her nursing license for a period of 18 months, a consequence I had absolutely no knowledge of throughout the following months. I want to describe the specific, devastating phone call that eventually revealed this entire situation. Receiving a call from a state nursing board investigator named Ms. Alvarado, who explained she was calling to verify certain employment and credential details as part of a routine, unrelated licensing matter. "I'm calling to confirm your employment at Cedar Ridge Medical Center," she said, referencing a hospital name I didn't immediately recognize, specifically regarding shifts logged under your license number between March and October of this year. I want to try to describe the specific, disorienting confusion of this opening question, genuinely believing, at first, that this must represent some kind of administrative error or case of mistaken identity, given that I had never worked at any facility called Cedar Ridge Medical Center, and had, throughout the specific months referenced, been working my normal, established position at my own actual hospital. "I think there's been some kind of mistake," I told her. "I've never worked at that facility. I don't even recognize the name." Ms. Alvarado, after a brief pause to verify additional details on her end, confirmed my license number precisely, along with an address and employment history that clearly, unambiguously matched documentation associated with my own actual, legitimate nursing credentials, despite referencing employment and shift work I had absolutely no knowledge of or connection to. I want to try to describe the specific, vertiginous shock of understanding, in real time, that someone had apparently been using my actual nursing license number to work shifts and administer patient care at an entirely different hospital. Throughout an 8-month period, I had no awareness of whatsoever. I want to describe the following exhausting conversation with Ms. Alvarado, working together to understand the actual scope of what had happened, a process that revealed increasingly disturbing details regarding both the duration and the specific nature of this unauthorized use of my professional credentials. This situation appears to involve someone using your license information to gain employment and administer patient care at a facility where you've never actually worked, Ms. Alvarado explained, once she'd reviewed the situation more thoroughly on her end. I need you to understand this represents a serious matter, both regarding potential identity theft affecting you directly and regarding significant patient safety concerns given that whoever has been working under your credentials may not actually hold valid licensure themselves. I want to describe the specific, exhausting process of working with both the nursing board and my own attorney to understand exactly how this situation had developed and, most urgently, who might actually be responsible for using my identity in this specific, professionally devastating way. I want to describe the specific detail that ultimately led investigators toward identifying Danielle as the actual responsible party, discovering that several personal details associated with the fraudulent employment records, a specific former address, an emergency contact phone number, matched information I recognized as connected to Danielle rather than representing information I had ever personally provided to any employer. I want to try to describe the specific, sickening realization of understanding that a former colleague and friend had apparently, deliberately stolen my professional identity specifically to continue working as a nurse despite her own license suspension. Understanding this meant she had been administering actual medications, making genuine clinical decisions, and providing direct patient care for 8 months, all while holding no legitimate legal authorization to perform any of these functions. I want to describe the formal investigation process that followed, involving both the state nursing board and, given the clear evidence of identity theft and potential criminal fraud, local law enforcement, working to fully document the scope of what Danielle had actually done throughout this 8-month period. I want to describe the specific, devastating scope this investigation ultimately revealed. Danielle had, apparently, used a combination of my actual license number alongside fabricated supporting documentation to secure employment at Cedar Ridge Medical Center roughly 2 months after her own suspension took effect, presenting herself under a slightly modified version of her own name, while using my genuine, active license number to pass the facility's credential verification process. I want to describe the specific, exhausting question this situation raised regarding actual patient safety throughout this 8-month period. Understanding that Danielle had been providing genuine medical care, including medication administration, without any legitimate licensure, precisely the kind of unauthorized practice that patient safety regulations and licensing requirements specifically exist to prevent. I confronted Danielle directly once investigators had confirmed her responsibility, a conversation that took place with both my own attorney and a nursing board representative present, given the serious legal implications this situation now carried. How could you do this? I asked her, during this devastating confrontation. You used my actual license, my actual professional identity, to keep working after you'd been suspended for a medication error that already hurt a patient. Do you understand what could have happened if you made another mistake while working under my name? Danielle's response, delivered through what became an increasingly emotional, complicated admission, revealed a combination of genuine desperation and troubling professional entitlement that, while providing some context, never adequately justified the specific, calculated choice to steal my professional identity rather than pursuing any legitimate path forward following her own suspension. I panicked, she said, during this confrontation. I couldn't afford 18 months without working, and I genuinely believed I was still a good nurse, that the medication error was just one mistake that didn't actually reflect my overall competence. I knew your license was active and in good standing, and I thought, if I was careful, I could just work under your credentials until my own suspension ended, and then just quietly go back to using my own license again without anyone ever needing to know. I want to try to describe the specific, layered devastation of this explanation, understanding that Danielle's underlying professional and financial desperation, however genuinely difficult, never justified the specific, sustained choice to steal my identity and continue practicing medicine without legitimate authorization, placing both my own professional reputation and, considerably more seriously, actual patient safety at genuine risk throughout this entire 8-month period. I want to describe the specific, exhausting professional and legal process I subsequently navigated to fully address this situation, working with the nursing board to formally document that I had no actual involvement in or knowledge of the fraudulent employment, a process that ultimately protected my own license status, though it required extensive documentation and formal hearings to fully establish this separation. I want to describe the specific, additional complexity this situation introduced regarding my own professional reputation, understanding that even once formally cleared of any actual wrongdoing, the mere association between my license number and this fraudulent, potentially dangerous practice created lasting professional complications, requiring me to proactively address the situation with my own actual employer and various professional references going forward. The criminal proceedings against Danielle, pursued given the clear evidence of both identity theft and unauthorized practice of medicine, ultimately resulted in a formal conviction, alongside an extended additional suspension of her own nursing license well beyond the original 18-month period, effectively ending, for the foreseeable future, any possibility of her returning to legitimate nursing practice. I want to describe the specific, ongoing complexity of processing this particular betrayal, understanding that unlike some forms of professional harm involving simple incompetence or ordinary workplace conflict, this situation touched something considerably more foundational: my own professional identity and legal authorization, weaponized without my knowledge to enable genuinely dangerous, unauthorized medical practice that could have resulted in serious patient harm throughout an extended period. I want to describe my own difficult process of processing genuine anger, not just regarding the personal betrayal from someone I'd considered a trusted colleague, but regarding the broader, more troubling reality that actual patients had received medical care from someone with no legitimate licensure. Understanding how fortunate our situation actually was that no documented patient harm occurred during this specific 8-month period, despite the genuine, significant risk this situation had created. It's been just over 16 months since that initial, devastating phone call from Ms. Alvarado first revealed this entire situation. My own nursing career has continued, formally cleared of any wrongdoing, though I remain, understandably, considerably more attentive now to the security of my own professional credentials and documentation than I'd ever previously considered necessary. I think, often, about the specific, unsettling nature of this particular betrayal, understanding that professional trust between colleagues, the kind of genuine collegial relationship Danielle and I had shared throughout 3 years of working together, apparently provided exactly the kind of access and familiarity she needed to construct this elaborate, dangerous fraud, using details about my own professional identity that only someone who had actually worked closely alongside me could have accessed and successfully exploited. If you've ever discovered that your own professional identity or credentials had been stolen and misused by someone you'd previously trusted, placing both your reputation and, potentially, public safety at genuine risk, I want to hear how you navigated both the practical legal resolution and the deeper question of professional trust this kind of betrayal inevitably raises. I used to believe that genuine, tested professional friendship, built over years of shared workplace experience, represented a reasonably reliable foundation for continued trust and collegial relationship. I've learned, in the most disorienting way possible, that even genuine professional trust can become vulnerable to exploitation when someone faces sufficient personal desperation, and that sometimes the specific, intimate knowledge that makes genuine friendship possible also provides exactly the access needed for the most calculated, dangerous kind of professional betrayal.